So, the year was 2011. I was attending TechEd, and I have to join one of the sessions that everybody wanted to go to, Case of Unexplained. Who of you in the room have seen the Case of Unexplained by Mark Rusinovich online or in person? Oh, just a few. Interesting. That probably shows my age, right? Then, year is 2018, and my colleague and friend from work did a similar session about that, Case of Unexplained, PowerShell edition. Anybody who've seen that one, maybe? Okay. If you didn't, there's good thing that actually all the sessions from PSConfEU are being recorded. So after the session, the first thing you can do, like first homework, watch the previous one because there's a lot of nice material in that one as well. And what those two sessions had in common is that both Mark Rusinovich and Daniel Both, my colleague, they were trying to judge all the things that don't necessarily work as you would expect them to. And there's some mystery involved in that. And the problem is that on the surface, it looks like it's really hard to explain why certain things behave the way they do. PowerShell is very helpful. That's a nice thing about it, but it's also a bad thing about it because sometimes it tries to help you and ruins the experience in the process. And today I'm going to show you some examples of those situations where you would expect that this behavior is justified. It maybe makes sense in a given context. But when you face those situations yourself, you might just find yourself in a situation where PowerShell doesn't behave the way you expect it to. So imagine that you are sitting in front of your computer. It's 9 a.m. in the morning on Monday. You just finished writing this magnificent code that's supposed to do something. You run it, and the result is nothing what you expected to. What you would definitely want to have there is just being able to figure out why it doesn't behave the way it does. So today I'm going to show you the situations and solutions. I have another session on Thursday where I'm going to show a few things about debugging in PowerShell, where you can actually figure out yourself what's going on. Today I'm just going to be a guide on. Today, so I'm going to just show you the resolutions right away. I'm not going to debug on stage. That's what I left for Thursday, when everybody's already relaxed after a few drinks, and failing during presentations is fine, I hope. But first things first, let's a few words about our sponsors. We are grateful to all of them. They make those things possible. They make it happen based on the financial point of view, financial point of view. So thank you very much to all the sponsors that are sponsoring these events. And I've been here for long enough to know that those names repeat every year. So we are even more grateful for that, so that we can depend on them, as Gael mentioned in the initial session. Few words about myself, in case you don't know me yet. So this is my name, the Twitter or X. I'm going to continue to call it Twitter regardless of whatever the branding will do. It's BLB. You can also use the same handle when you try to find my work on GitHub, which is not a lot. It's not very active, but sometimes I put things there, and definitely the presentation, this one and the one from Thursday will be there to find. I work for Optiver, which is just a company that's based in Amsterdam. And what they do is definitely they value automation. They value people that like to automate things. And that's how I ended up there. If you have any questions, you can hit me on Twitter. You can hit me also on email. I made this promise, and I realized that I got email like a month ago from somebody that I didn't reply to. That's another thing. It's not that I'm ignoring you. It's just that sometimes I'm just forgetful. I hope that I won't show that skill during this presentation. So the agenda for today. I have a few things prepared, and to be clear, we don't have to get through all of those items. If you have any question during the presentation, just stop me at any point in time, raise your hand, wait for the microphone to be delivered to you so we can actually record your voice as well, not just mine, which definitely will be improvement. And then we can just make sure that your question is also recorded for others that will watch it afterwards, so they know what you asked for. In case I don't remember to repeat your question, which is also another option. So I have a few things prepared, but again, if you have any questions, normally there's a Q&A time reserved at the end. It's just fine. But if you have a question earlier, just don't hesitate, just ask, because maybe you will forget the half an hour what you wanted to ask. So it's better to ask as soon as possible, so I can actually immediately just respond to your questions. So first example, This one is for my friend Haji. He likes to work with Active Directory because he's an IAM engineer in our team. And what he wanted to do, basically, was just to get some information from Active Directory and append a column that he would later use in CSV, maybe Excel. I don't know how he operates with those files later. The point is that he wanted to just add empty column at the end, and he wanted to use Active Directory module for that. And the result was definitely not satisfactory to his liking. So let's take a look at that. What do I mean by that? So the behavior that you would expect, let me just switch to something that we can see the code and the run at the same time. Should be slightly easier. Is it readable? Well, by the way, the font size is okay? Great. Otherwise, we are in trouble. So that's pretty much what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to make sure that the CSV that he will generate will have 3 columns. 2 of them actually exist in the process object. The third one absolutely doesn't. And that's the behavior that you expect when you run PowerShell with a select object. If we try to get that into JSON, same behavior, we get exactly what we asked for. So we have properties that exist on the process objects, but we also get this foobar property that doesn't exist. And that one is basically value of that one is null. But that's not exactly what's going to happen if we try to do that in Active Directory. Let's hope that the password is correct. Probably it's not. Ugh. Okay, I'm in. Great. So what I'm trying to do here is to get those characters from South Park in my CSV. And as you can see, the last column, custom parameter, it's nothing what I expected to see there. It's not null. It's all of a sudden something weird, which is Microsoft Active Directory management at property value collection. Any ideas why that happened? So Active Directory is something that you can expand on, right? It has a schema that you can change. So when the team responsible for this module was creating it, they thought, okay, we need to support that. So let's say your schema actually contains property named custom parameter. You want to be able to provide the value for it. And the way they implemented it, if you try to use select object, it will actually just try to figure it out. And then the biggest chunk of thing that you can do with Active Directory is just to create this AD property value collection, which is just, anything can fit in that. Therefore, it's pretty safe to assume that this is what you're going to do. But obviously, this breaks this logic. And if we look at this from JSON perspective, you see that we just get a collection that's empty, which is not exactly what we wanted to achieve with this one. What's the fix? Well, there are multiple ways to fix it. One that I proposed to him is just to make sure that you are more specific, more concrete about what you do with this code. So instead of assuming that select object will create this empty value for you, you just make sure that it's empty yourself. Okay, let's just exit the session because I tend to forget about that one, and then we are in trouble with the next demo. Next demo, please. Yeah. So the next one is related to my colleagues. My colleague Martin, he's primarily using VS Code and using PowerShell 7 inside of it. We, as a company, we're still stuck on 5.1. And we have a lot of DSC-related code. And one of the things that you do a lot with DSC is you create data files. So, and we use Git as well next to that. The problem is that if you have the data files in Git and you start sorting them randomly, you may end up in a situation where you delete some important part of the configuration, even though you didn't intend to, just because sorting was just messed up and it doesn't show very well in the diff. So what we did for that, we created a function that will just export PowerShell data file in the way that it's formatted always the same, which is great, unless you hit a bug. And this is exactly what happened to us. We didn't realize what's going on. So the problem was that my colleague was creating a PR, where he was pushing the code, and our testing framework would just say, oh, you are sorting it like this, but this is not how you should sort it. This is how it should be sorted. And the suggestion from our automation was use our command. And he did. And he got the same error. And he did. I mean, he eventually stopped and asked the question, why it doesn't work, luckily. So then we realized, okay, there was actually a problem with sorting in PowerShell 5.1, which was related to actually sorting in .NET framework itself. So we really go deep dive in this one. Okay, so let's just go to the coding. So first, let's just check the status of the branch. So it should be clean. Yeah, there's nothing to commit. Sorry, let me just switch to this view so we can actually follow along. Now I'm importing the module which contains this special function that we have. And now if I just do it here in PowerShell 5.1, and I just get status, you can see nothing changed, right? It's all fine. That's exactly what we expected. That's exactly what should happen in our build pipeline. But my colleague decided to use PowerShell 7. And when he did that, well, the behavior is slightly different. Now we have some differences. We see that the sort test PSD1 is now suddenly changed. What happened? If we just take the good diff, you can see that those items were swapped around. So the AA minus B was swapped with A minus B. Why? Well, apparently in PowerShell, .NET Framework, the sorting function was broken. Let me just revert those changes. So if I just look at the script, I'm just gonna showcase those problems. You can see that what I'm doing here is just sorting two things that's in theory they should be sorted the same, right? Because A minus, and then I'm just adding additional character at the end. So in the end, they both should be, like, when the sorting is proper, nothing should change, right? Just adding a character to the string should not change the way they are sorted. But if we run the script in PowerShell 5, what happens is that suddenly AAB is sorted before A minus B, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Any sorting with this one makes no sense because, again, if you just append a character to the string, the sorting should not change, but it does. So the way my colleague was doing it, he was just running it PowerShell 7, which was fixed. Actually, .NET Framework behind it was fixed. And suddenly, the sorting is correct. So his code is correct, ours is incorrect, but ours in the build pipeline, so our wins, right? So in the end, we just had to decide, okay, do we want to continue with PowerShell 5.1, which we had to because of the runners, you know, the things that Rob mentioned during the previous session. There's actually, there was a issue open on GitHub, which, well, internet probably doesn't work on this laptop. Trust me, there was open GitHub issue for that one, which was fixed by fixing .NET. So it wasn't fixed in PowerShell itself. PowerShell was not really responsible for the fix or the problem. It was just that .NET was broken like this. Next. Any questions, by the way? No. Get content returns too much. That's my colleague Harpreet, who had idea of using text file on disk. Just read it from disk, put it in JSON, export the JSON, win, profit. The problem is that he got much more than he asked for. The JSON that was as a result of getting a content of a file from disk was, let's say, more verbose than he was expecting it to be. Let's take a look at that one. So, as I mentioned, we just read the value. Oh, sorry. Let me again switch the view so we can actually see and follow along. So, if you look at the value yourself, it looks fine. If you put a double quote, still looks fine. The moment you try to turn it into JSON, however, well, things go out of the way. It's like, okay, there is no, this is not that. So wait, where is it? There's somewhere. Oh yeah, there we go. It's value. This is not exactly what I asked for, right? Completely something different. And the problem is that when you run get content, it doesn't just read the content from the file from disk. What it does in turn is actually append some metadata, some node properties to the actual string itself. So then later you can figure out which document that you took it from, which can be handy in some situations, but doesn't help to create a nice JSON for sure. So you can see those node properties are always there, but when we display things in PowerShell, it will just show you the string value. So you may think this is just string, which is not exactly that. So I come up with a few solutions. So first of all, you can definitely cast this to string. Works perfectly fine because then you kind of like force PowerShell to say, I don't want you to be smart. I don't want you to help me. I want you to make it a string, and that's it. Another one, it's just as simple as just putting in double quotes. It's already a string. Putting in double quotes shouldn't change anything. It does. Deal with it. And finally, another one, it's again, like we have a string. To string should not change anything. But in this case, it does, because we just strip it off from all this metadata that was attached to it by getContent commandlet. And fun enough, again, in PowerShell 7, this is not the case anymore. So if you're PowerShell 7, you probably didn't see this issue before. If you are still stuck on 5.1 as I am, well, you just have to figure out a way to work around it. And next one. Sorry. Automatic variables. Okay, go ahead. So the question is, would the minus row switch work? And unfortunately, no. It's I was thinking about that. I actually added this example, run it through, and it still append the data. It just this, like if it would be multiple lines and you would just split it, then maybe you would just get that. But because the row will still read the whole thing as a single string and still append all the metadata, you still get the same behavior. So yeah, that's a very good idea, but unfortunately, it doesn't work. So yeah, automatic variables matches. So PowerShell have really plenty of nice automatic variables, but you have to be careful when you use them. You have to understand how they work, because if you don't understand and you think that you understand how they work, you might run into issues. And that's another example of situation where my colleague actually had this problem where he was parsing some log files and generating the nice objects based on the data in the log file. And suddenly all of the lines that he got, all the objects that he got, all of them were tripled. So each object was echoed 3 times instead of just once as he expected. So let's move on to the actual code. So we have a pattern. Obviously, he didn't care about fruits so much. So the log files here are actually made up. But let's say we have this pattern when we try to find the count, how many apples and pears we have in our log. So if you look at the log files itself, it has this structure where you have a line that you care about, 2 lines that you don't, and then 1 line that you care, 2 that you don't. And the way he tried to create those objects was using the syntax like this. So he would just first check if it match, and then if matches. The problem is that matches doesn't work as he expected to. Total matches doesn't change if you didn't match. So what happened was that the first match that he hit, the dollar matches would be updated, but afterwards, the dollar matches will always be something, so the if matches will not give you any decent results. So that's something you have to remember. So if we look at the select string, which is going to be pretty much parsing this file just to find all the matches, you can see that indeed only 3 lines match, even though we got 9 objects back. And all of them, as you can see, are coming in triplets. So each one is repeated 3 times. And the reason for that is that we use this syntax. So if I do this, let's say this match that, dollar matches doesn't change. It still shows me the last match that we had from this file, right? See, it's 0.5, exactly what we had there. So dollar matches didn't change at all. That was what he expected, but that's not what happened. So if I do another match where we actually does match, dollar matches will be updated. And now it just shows you the last result from the dollar matches. The way to fix it, well, it's not that hard. It's just instead of doing the if matches, you just do the if. The dollar minus match is actually an operator they can use. So instead of doing if matches, you can do if dollars matches your pattern, right? And then it only will show you those lines that actually match the pattern that you wanted to match it against. Which is, again, just using automatic variables is great, but you just need to understand how they work. And I forgot to include here, there's about automatic variables help document. I strongly recommend reading it before before using any of those automatic variables, so that you don't end up in a situation like my colleague did. Next one. So parameter names. PowerShell has some automatic variables, as we just mentioned. The problem is that some of them looks like a very tempting names for your parameters. My favorite is $host. I cannot name the number. I cannot say how many times I try to create a parameter named $host. which is automatic variable. So obviously it didn't work as expected. I'm also very often involved in the working with SAN networks. So there you have fiber channel switches. So I would just call parameter switch and expect it to work. Not a good idea. So again, knowing those pitfalls, knowing those special variables is very useful. And I'm going to show you how that can impact your code and how can it impact the results you get as a result. So I have this function, and it's actually interesting that IC storage is immediately telling me, see, potential name conflict. So if I would always use PowerShell IC with IC storage, it will already be helpful to let me know, oh, careful there. But I'm going to do that anyways, because this is demo, so I'm going to break things. So again, let me just move to this view so I can actually see it. So I'm defining this function. Now I'm going to run it. And if I run it like this, you can see that switch became something really nasty. System RI SRI enumerator. What happened? Well, what happened is that I'm running this code inside of the switch statement. See, here I'm using this variable. Actually, you cannot see it because it's not wrapped properly. But if I move all the way, where is it switch? Oh yeah, sorry, this is this line, right? So I'm using it within the switch statement. Within the switch statement, $switch becomes your access to your switch statement itself. It allows you to move next, move previous, a lot of nice things that people never use. But PowerShell team decided it will be useful for people that are really want to do something nasty to be able to. And that means that if I'm running this code inside of this loop, it will always be updated with this switch. It's even worse when you assign the type to your parameter, because if I type it as string, I'm even losing the whole access to $switch variable, because it will always be converted from this array to the string, and therefore completely useless. Right now, I could potentially still use it, which I don't want to. So the solution, well, actually I have a help, but yeah, internet doesn't work, so I won't be able to show you that. So the solution for that, well, is just rename your parameters to something that makes sense still in the context of the function. Sorry?
Screen is black.
Ooh. Thank you. So let's hope that it stays white for the rest of the presentation. So now I'm just changed this parameter. And again, magic of IC storage allowed me to also change it here. So if I run it again, now it does exactly what I expected to. And again, this is not just made up, right? I really had a parameter named switch. I was expecting it to work, and I then found the hard way it doesn't. So yeah, be careful, because it doesn't matter how skillful you are, how many years you work with PowerShell. You always may end up in a situation where you just break your own code by just doing something that you expect to work, which it doesn't. Yes? Reverse name. Sorry, the question was, is it possible to get the reverse names? Okay, so the question is how to get the list of those automatic variables, I guess, right? To be honest, I don't know about any easy way inside of PowerShell itself. It's something I would need to check. I'm pretty sure that you can get it. It's possible that if you could just get variable, it will be listed there. But I think some of them actually appear only in certain contexts. So you'd have to run get variable in the specific context in order to see them. So my approach is usually just read documentation if something like that happens, and just debug your code. So on Thursday, I will show you how you can actually debug it in a way that you suddenly see, okay, this is something that happened and I didn't expect it to. Not this specific example, because this one is slightly too complicated for the session I have. But yeah, you can. I think that get variable may help you, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. We can actually just run it right now just to see, right? So let's see, get variable name switch. Now, see, this is not happening, but if I do switch foo and bar, actually no, default. And now we do get variable name switch. Here, I would expect it to return, right? So you really have to be context sensitive. It's really not helpful to find those hidden gems, which tend to be sometimes sand in your eyes rather than just something that will help you. Okay. The next one. How we are on time? Oh, we are close. The next one is example where I encourage my colleagues to use splatting. How many of you use using splatting in your code? Great. If you don't, please start, but be careful with what I'm going to just show you now, because there are some pitfalls in using splatting. So the way that we did is just we had a command that was long. The one I will going to show you is pretty short, but you can imagine that there are commands where you have like 6-7 parameters with long values that you need to pass on to a function. Splatting allows you to, instead of having it like this, you can turn it around and just have it like that. And I think the GitHub Copilot is very good to help you. So that's, I'm going to praise VS Code for something. The Copilot really helps you build those splatting easily. It will just suggest the solution for you. And I think it's going to suggest you correct solution. This is not going to be solution I'm going to show you here, because that's how we ended up in this mess. So let's change to the scripts. So I had this nice function that worked, right? And then somebody created a PR with it. Oh, come on. Maybe like that. So the function is defined. What do you see here? I don't want that. I want to have splatting. Again, this is probably not the best example because I just have 2 parameters, so I could get away with not having any splatting at all. But I insist on using splatting as a religion. So my non-religious colleague had to fix it. And this one works just fine. So we get, again, the soft pack characters, all good and dandy. And when he ran his, he got that. And at first we were like looking at it like the term stop. What do you mean stop? Where do we have stop in our code? And this is really like you have like 6 lines here, right? In his case, it was, let's say 100 lines of code. So here you can probably spot, some of you at least, where the issue happens. But when we were reviewing that ourselves in the office, it wasn't as obvious as it is now. So the solution for that one, or actually way to get to the solution, which I don't think anybody presents on it, unfortunately, this PSConfEU, is AST. AST allows you to analyze your code without actually running your code. Because in this case, we cannot even run the code. You cannot really debug it. I tried to create a PS breakpoint on command stop, but because command stop doesn't exist, it was not breaking on it because, well, it doesn't exist, right? So it wasn't really that easy to figure out what's going on with just debugger. But with IST, you can definitely do that. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So I can grab all the commands from my function by running the parser. In this case, I'm not even parsing it because I have a command. This one has the .scriptlock property attached to it, which in turn has .est, which is already AST. By the way, AST stands for Abstract Syntax Tree. And this is the way to kind of like look at the code the same way your engine would look at it. So it's not like you're parsing it with regular expressions. You just really like read it as if it was just all the statements, all the commands, all the parameters, everything like that in your code. So if I run this one, what I will find all the commands that are inside of this function. So not just the command that I have, like the external one, but all the internal ones. And if you look here, we have this command stop, right? This is the first item on the list. We have import CLI XML and write log. We have those guys. We do expect them, but we see also the stop, which we didn't expect. And I can be even smart about it because right now I have just 3 commands, but let's say it's 2000. I'm not going to like scroll through pages and pages of text to find this one that I'm actually looking for. So I can limit the search as well with AST. Just say, okay, give me this, where get command name is stop, right? So now my results, I just got this single command, which is great. Now I find my needle in the haystack. Now I just need to figure out where this needle is located. And I can do that by looking at the start line number of this command. Great. Okay, now this is a function, right? It doesn't even necessarily have lines. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. By the way, all the code will be on GitHub, so you don't have to read it all. But what it does here, I'm just trying to present it as something that has lines numbers. And if you look at line 12, which is interesting because that's not the line I was expecting. It's here, right? Error action stop. What's happened here? Well, because I need to assign error action value in the usual syntax, I can just put it like this, right? I can do error action stop without putting in the double quotes or single quotes or any quotes for that matter. Because in this language mode, anything that doesn't appear to be comment, it will be treated as string. But the moment I try to create hash table, that's no longer true. So here, the stop actually has a command. So what PowerShell would expect, I will run stop command and will get the result for error action. That's not what I wanted, right? What I wanted instead is just put it in the single quotes, double quotes, whatever. It doesn't really matter in this case. And by doing that, I would fix my code and still maintain the splatting. So that's what we did. Yep.
But in that PowerShell will try to resolve it as get stop command, because if you disrespect the command and you don't put any verbs in front of it, it always expects, okay, it could be get.
Yes. So the comment was that if you have a command that doesn't exist in PowerShell, PowerShell is so helpful that will try to make sure there's nothing named get minus whatever you typed. So for example, because of that, you can type something like date, and you don't have date command, but it will run get date under the hood. So if you trace command and expression get, date, and PS host, and we care about command discovery, I believe. You can see what PowerShell did. Actually, I think this is just for not native commands, right? I think there was another one. Anyway, moving on. So basically you can trace it so you can actually see that it does that. So it's just eventually just going to get tired of not finding any module, any function, any executable that matches the name, and say, he probably means get again. I forgot to include it in his command. And I will just append it for you, which can be confusing if you don't expect it. Okay, next one. Unfinished business. So this is example where my colleague was doing some nice coding and he was using sub-expressions a lot. And at a certain point, he was adding a lot of code, and as a result, he couldn't import his module anymore because it would tell him that last line in his function has an error. Like, okay. And it was complaining that sub-expression is not closed. So imagine you have like 200-line function and you have to figure out what happened on the way there, that sub-expression is not properly formatted. You would need to look at each sub-expression and then figure out which one is broken. You can do it in the, just open code editor and just scroll. But in what we can do instead, you can probably guess, just use AST to get the same result. Okay, so let's move on to our code. So yeah, I'm going to try to import this module. And as I mentioned, you can see it shows me that last line here, the closing curly has a problem with closing bracket. Not very helpful, because obviously that's not the line where the actual problem happened. This is only when the moment where the parser realized that it cannot really help you because that's the end of file. So it's game over, pretty much. So this time, because we have it in the file, we're going to use parse file to get the content of the file in the format of AST. And then we can just search again for sub-expressions, right? Because we know it's one of the sub-expressions. It told us here, closing in sub-expression. So it has to be something wrong with one of the sub-expressions we have in this module. If I run this one, and I just look at the table, I can see there are 3 sub-expressions. Those 2 bottom one look pretty okayish, right? It's just $item. Probably you didn't even need sub-expression for that, but because this is demo, so I came up with something really ridiculous that you would never do. But that one looks suspicious, like even see three dots, which means there's more. Okay. So let's look at the length of those. And you can see that this is 5, but this is 300. Like, what the hell is going on with this sub-expression? Why it needs 304 characters? Especially if you consider that the whole function is pretty much like this is 2/3 of my function, right? So it's probably something wrong going on there. And if I look at this, you can see, I mean, it's not that easy to parse it with your eyes, but you can see there's a sub-expression starting here, and then we do -f, and there's a closing bracket, but this is just for this get date, right? I didn't ever close the sub-expression itself. So he went in the actual editor to find it. I used AST, and we pretty much finished at the same time. But I would argue that I was, using less resources myself with my brain than he was, and in the end, I was happy with the results as well. Any questions, by the way, because we are running into Q&A time? Nope. Okay. So I have one more. This is yet another colleague that was writing some nice code. So I encouraged her to use classes in her code. And she created a class. She created a nice module for a lever process, right? And she had the method that she wanted to call on each person that's supposed to be a lever to figure out if the leaving process is complete, right? And that would be a collection of the information. Okay, usually they have their VDI, they have a mailbox, they have AD account. All of those things had to be cleaned up before we could consider a lever to be removed from our organization. So she wrote the code around it. And let's look at this code. So we have our class employee. And we have this method lever process complete on it, which pretty much just says if either of the fields like this mailbox home folder VDI is true, which means that the result is false, right? If you have any of those things, you are not complete. You still have work to do. So let's create a lever. I mean, I don't want to leave this company, but I guess for the purpose of the demo. And then she wrote the code like this. And she asked me, okay, Bartek, it's showing me true. And it's not true, right? I see with my own eyes there's something wrong, but the result is not what I would expect. Which, if you consider this as a lever, it can be problematic, because if you consider somebody already finished and you leave their home folder or their mailbox or anything like that just because you decided that it's already done, you then have to go back and clean up all those things post factum, which is not great. So what happened here? Well, you have to understand how PowerShell works. Again, it's trying to be helpful and sometimes fails miserably at that. So the way that her code is structured, if you look carefully, is that she was calling .me.lever process complete without any brackets. What happens when you do that is that PowerShell will be, again, trying to be helpful, and will show you all the overload definitions for this method, which is very useful when you, for example, first time use some .NET class. I strongly recommend using the syntax when you do that. How many of you, by the way, use it for like discovering like different classes, methods? Yeah, I think you should do that more often, because if you don't know, you can find documentation online, but you can also find documentation in console very often, which is even better, because then you don't have to open another browser window or like 224th tab in your Chrome. So this is great, but if you try to cast it into Boolean, it results in true. So it kind of hides the fact that you didn't call a method when you do that in an if statement. Because in if statement, what happens, PowerShell, being helpful, will convert anything that you throw at it to Boolean, even if it's just overall definition for your method, right? And this conversion results in true, which means that no matter how many of those properties that your user has still considered to be true, it will always result in true. So you can have the lever that's complete and lever that's completely not complete. And then as a result, you will always get true because the method definition will be casted into Boolean. So you have to be careful with those, because if you actually do the proper work, so you just run the method, indeed, then you will get a result that is what you would expect. And we can also prove it by having another lever object where all those things are considered false. And if you run it again, we'll get true as a result, which is expected, right? If we don't have VDI, we don't have mailbox, we don't have home folder, everything is expected, so we are free to go. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Does the strict mode help for some problem?
Sorry, which trick?
The
Strict mode. Yeah, that's a very good point. I believe that when you run in the strict mode, I think it will not allow you to have this in your function. We can try that. But I'm not sure. So set strict mode version latest. Does it still work? Okay. Latest. If only I could type. So I should have it, right? So lever process complete. Nope. And maybe if I would do this, then it would complain, right? I think it only complains when you try to use a property or method that doesn't exist, which is not the case here, right? We do have it. Yeah. So a lot of those things are definitely a lot of those things can be solved by using strict mode. The problem is that if you start using strict mode, you may stop making PowerShell help you in the cases where you actually expect it to. So it's always about the balance, right? How much do you want the PowerShell to do work for you? And how much do you want to be responsible for issues that will appear from that? Or vice versa, if you maybe just want to be in full control, and then set strict mode is usually a good call. And then you just face the fact that some things that you would expect to work stop working.
I usually use strict mode when I code and I test my code, and then another strict mode for doing.
Yeah, so the comment was that sorry, I didn't got your name.
Yeah.
So Jan is actually using set strict mode to when he codes, so that his code is guaranteed to work, and then he removes it when he publishes that, so the set strict mode is not stuck with the code that he's publishing to others, right? Yeah, I think it's a very good call, because then indeed it forces you to be more conscious about your decisions rather than just rely on PowerShell doing the work for you. And I think that when you create actual modules, functions, and whatsoever, that is kind of like published to other users, it's probably a good call not to rely on those automatic things in there. It's different when you run in the console, because in the console anything is possible, anything is good. Aliases, making those assumptions, avoiding like using those syntaxes that I show you, it's fine. But if you write a module, write a script that should be reused, maybe it's a good idea to just prevent those things from just basically just hitting you in the face in the long run, right? Just that can happen. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your attendance here, and have a good conference.